right, welcome to the Secret Origins podcast. This is Nick. I've got today Travis Cripps from Little Egypt Pediatric Dentistry in Carbondale, Illinois. Dr. Travis, thanks for joining us today.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Nick. I'm excited to be here.
So I want to start by talking just a little bit about, when you go into pediatric dentistry, or when someone's thinking about going into pediatric dentistry, a lot of stick in the muds, a lot of things done the same way they've been done for the last 50 years. Is that accurate? Am I on the right trail there?
You know, I would say yes with a grain of salt. I will give pediatric dentistry as a whole a little bit of a reprieve, but dentistry in general, I think you hit the nail on the head. If you think of your traditional visit to the dentist, especially back when you were a kid, even though there are a lot of fantastic practitioners, it wasn't always dedicated and devoted to a fun environment for the kid. I think pediatric dentistry as a whole is changing that. But I do think in a current dynamic in the current world that we're in, we could go further.
Oh yeah, and for anybody who has never met you and never seen your office, you very distinctly chose not to go that route. You went on a scale of 1 to 10. You went to like straight up 11 right out of the gate, didn't you?
We tried. You know, between the Lego inspired walls, we went all out toy theme when we thought about what is it that kind of singularly unites all kids, boy, girl, young, older. For me, that was toys. It wasn't necessarily video games or sports. Toys are kind of that unifying thing, which for us led to these 8-foot tall Lego inspired walls, led to video games in the lobby, furniture made out of Legos. It was really led to this office that we kind of thought up and executed.
So when you started getting the idea of just running with this, what happened? Why did you decide to go so crazy?
I mean, honestly, one thing kind of led to another. If you are someone who's kind of creative minded, I think you'll understand what I mean when I say you get one idea and it just leads to 10 more ideas. And so we led down this path. We knew the theme of our office was going to be toys. We wanted toy inspired. And then we ran with that. It was what toys? Well, the Lego inspired concept meant we can constantly change it if we need to. You can build anything out of a Lego brick, you know? And so it led down this path of kind of a greater mission of we want to be a building block of the community, which led into these 8-foot tall Lego inspired walls. And we have Lego building walls in the lobby, and really just evolved into this. So we didn't intend on going this crazy at first. It just kind of ended up that way.
But what's interesting too is like when I think back of like you kind of mentioned like when I was a kid, when I went to the pediatric dentist or when I went to any dentist, like the crowning best moment of going to the dentist was getting this little like tchotchke toy, right? That was 5 cents worth of plastic that came out of a vending machine at a restaurant or something like that. Like that was the epitome of like joy of going to the dentist. And you just took that and you turned the volume all the way up as loud as it would go. And you guys have just gone absolutely crazy in this. You know, you've rented out the movie theater for the Mario Party event. You guys do like not just like, hey, here's a little toy, but like here's a giant set of Legos. You've done the mystery prize box giveaways. You've done all of this stuff, and then to take that even further, you've amplified that across social media. So like you're constantly on social media, you're constantly interacting with kids, you're constantly sponsoring events, and that's really been like defining for your office, hasn't it?
Oh, it has been. It's really gained steam very quickly. I know we're going to get into this as we talk, but the velocity of that has really shocked me, of how we've amplified it across different platforms, and then real life into social has really gained traction quickly.
Yeah, so we will definitely get into that. Before we get too far into like the things over there, what I want to start talking about is just a little bit about, what are the realities of starting a dental practice, a pediatric dentistry practice, as an entrepreneur, because you are not only a doctor who has to deal with all of those concerns and a business owner, you've got a lot on your plate that many business owners don't have to deal with, like from malpractice insurance to literally I think you have how many days it's been since you've been bit on your window. Like I was laughing about that the other day when I came in. You have to deal with a lot of challenges that regular entrepreneurs don't have to. So, like, one, what are some of the main challenges of entrepreneurship for you specifically? And then what was your single biggest challenge to overcome?
Yeah, that's a great question. The I kind of look at entrepreneurship in general, and you understand this coming from a business background. Every business kind of has its individual struggles. In the pediatric dental world, first and foremost, it's the barrier to entry to even become a pediatric dentist. And that's probably your biggest initial struggle. You're looking at a minimum of 10 years of schooling to become a pediatric dentist. And on top of that, the debt load that you're going to take on in order to become a pediatric dentist. I went a little bit more, I went the Air Force route. So I went a little lower debt way to get here. But for the vast majority of pediatric dentists, you're going to run into a massive debt load, and then you're going to have very high startup costs. So what is hard about pediatric dentistry is the equipment that we need. There's really no substitute for it. We are in a very niche industry. And so I would maybe argue that that's the biggest struggle for a startup business is you can't simply, you could start with one dental chair and one dental operatory, but you can't start that in your garage. You can't do that in your kitchen. You have to be in a dental setting that is permitted, that is with your license, with all the safety checks, with the equipment that can actually withstand the work and is actually designed for it. And none of that is inexpensive. And so there are ways to reduce the cost. There's no true low cost way to start. And so that would be, from a business standpoint, a very that would be a hurdle.
So, for somebody who's not in the dental world, especially not the pediatric dental world, will you give me some ballpark figures of just so that listeners can kind of understand? One, how much does it cost in a range to become a pediatric dentist? How many hours? And then to open a dental practice and even do a good job of it, what kind of range is talking about there? Would you just give some reference numbers? They don't have to be exact.
Yeah. Oh no, that's totally fine. Yeah, I'm an open book, and so when it comes to it, variability, I will say is wide variability nationally. And so depending on the school you go to, depending on your residency, we'll say dental school. I haven't looked at these figures lately, but let's call it $300,000 to $400,000 to get through undergrad and dental school. Residency, some residencies are paid, others you pay more to go to residency. So we're just going to kind of ballpark that at $400,000 to $500,000 total debt to graduate. The standard startup practice loan that you're going to get from a major bank, your Bank of America, Huntington, anyone like that, is usually about $550,000 is your average dental startup loan that you basically walk in day one and they take the risk because you're a dentist and there's a low default rate on dentists, and you can sign a paper and pretty well day one get a loan for $550,000, which I found through my search is actually pretty close to what it's going to take to get you up and running. Because we're in a lower cost of living area, I was able to acquire my building, and I was a little more creative with my construction, and I was able to equip a little bit more and be a little more strategic with my build out to where I was around that number, but got a little bit more for it. So there is some strategy to it. And if you know real estate and if you know the business side of construction, you can definitely save money on things. But for this purpose, let's say 500 in debt and then another 500 for the loan. So you're looking at about $1 million in debt to get rolling.
To before you can make your first actual dollar.
Correct.
And so to say that this is not for everyone is probably the most dramatic understatement on the planet. And actually that's reflected in the numbers nationwide. I think I read somewhere that there's like 7,000 pediatric dentists in the United States, like total. Is that number even kind of close?
That is another figure I haven't looked at lately, but last I checked, that was close. I think it was flirting with 7,000 the last time I checked. And
so like you already are 1 in 7,000. There are very few professions that have numbers that low.
Right. Yeah. And so, strength and weakness to that, from a business standpoint, it's clearly hard to get there. But again, once you get there, you're one of few.
So one of my favorite things about having conversations with entrepreneurs is that I feel like passion plays such a huge part in entrepreneurship and business. And when you're doing something that you really love and you're doing it well, it totally shines through. And I think that you are a rare example of this at the highest level. So like how did you find a passion for pediatric dentistry at the level you found it, and what part does that play in like your day-to-day success?
That's a great question. I mean, as far as finding a passion for pediatric dentistry, I think that started kind of in two places. And the first one was I knew very, very oddly from a very young age that I liked kids. And now looking back on it, I was a kid when I knew I liked helping kids. I remember being in junior high and, first graders would have an issue and I would go help them just because I had I think some of that big brother nurturing nature to just who I was, to my temperament. And so as I got older, my mom would teach craft classes and I was a high schooler who was helping teach craft classes. And I kind of just developed this ability to work with kids, and I was always comfortable around kids. So that was kind of part of just my personality. In high school, I had figured out also very early that I wanted to go into the medical field. And so I had done what I think is what I recommend every young individual does, because it
Mm-hmm.
was something that was very important to my career, is that I shadowed multiple medical professions. And I went and watched physicians, I watched dentists, I watched optometrists. And ultimately, what I found is I thought I would be a pediatrician, but when I saw the dentist, I realized that I preferred their lifestyle. I preferred the fact that they got to own their business, their autonomy, as opposed to working for a bigger group or a hospital. And I set my sights on dentistry probably around my sophomore year of high school. And so going through the dental process, I went through dental school, really liked my pediatric rotations. I spent 4 years in the military where I got to do everything except for pediatrics. And then coming out of the military, I actually kind of had a little bit of a reawakening, if you will, because in the military, you have this big mission. And the mission is always to serve, basically stick to your core values of integrity, service, and education. And I had this mission, but I didn't fill that mission with general dentistry. I liked it, but I wasn't super passionate about it.
Right.
I reevaluated that, realized that helping kids was something that really, truly motivated me. So I went back, threw my name in the hat, got into St. Louis University's residency. And in about the first week, I realized I had made the right choice and have not for a second regretted it since.
I love that. So I have to tell you, when we were getting ready for this, this is probably the question that I was most excited to ask you on this entire interview from the second I looked at it. And I get to ask this question to a lot of different entrepreneurs from a lot of different walks of life who have really, really exciting kind of like jobs. But I think you're going to have the most fun answer to this. Tell me what a typical day looks like inside your business.
What a typical day looks like at Little Egypt Pediatric Dentistry. Sheer chaos. Organized chaos. I always refer to everyone as in our business, and I wish I could give credit to the person that coined this analogy, but we're the ducks on the pond, where everything above the water is calm, but below the surface we're moving like crazy. So a typical day in our office, it's a combination of routine preventative dentistry, your cleanings, your exams, the fluoride treatments, and then also a restorative treatment. So your fillings, crowns, extractions, anything along those lines. So we kind of have that sprinkled in all throughout the day. So if you were a fly on the wall in our office, you would see me just kind of bouncing room to room to room, kind of going between procedures, between treatments. And in the grander scheme of things, the fun part of pediatric dentistry, what happens is when you get in the room is when you have the interactions with the kids. And this is where like the real secret sauce of pediatric dentistry and honestly our business lies, is the conversations with the kids, because you get in the room and that's where you don't know where your day is going to go. I might in the first room have a kiddo with autism spectrum disorder, and I walk in and I'm like, hey buddy, how are you? And we're very calm and we're very collected and we're very repetitive. And then I go into the next room. It's like, hey man, how are you? You like Sonic? I bet I can do this exam faster than Sonic. Let's charge up our shoes and go buzz, buzz, buzz. Here's my mirror. Oh, I see tails. And it is like that all day long. The third kid, I may dress up as a character because he has his favorite character. So like tells me, I love Blippy. And all of a sudden I change my hat, change my glasses, and boom, now I'm, hey, how are you? And so the typical day of pediatric dentistry, where I say it's organized chaos, is it's dentistry, but it is very much catered to the individual kid, which if you saw the rate that we are bouncing and the rate that we are changing to cater to the individual to make their experience special, that's where you'd be like, oh my gosh, like that is, it's well rehearsed orchestra.
Well,
Yeah,
and
but I
then
mean, the stuff the kids say is priceless. You know,
oh,
the funny moments.
my favorite one too, and I think we brought this up before, but like you had the little girl who like showed up with the fake teeth prank, and waited for you to come into the room, and so she's got these like hillbilly bob teeth going on as you walk in the room, and she was what, 6 years old?
She's 5 or 6, but she walks in with these hillbilly Billy Bob teeth in, and tells me, "Hi, I'm your new mascot," and I'm like, the funniest single moment probably of my career. This is the same girl that the week before tells me, hey, I don't want to go to jail because my neighbor went to jail and they serve ground beef there. I don't like ground beef. I'm never going to jail. I'm just like out of nowhere, and it's so random, and kids keep you on your toes so much that it's almost impossible not to have fun doing this.
Well, and then like I love the creativity and imagination, and so like not only do you inspire that, but the whole office inspires that. You've got the arcade machine out front. You're giving away prizes. You got Legos all over. You're dressing up as Blippi, and so like you get to have all of this kind of chaos, but at the same time, you get to make this experience something that is fun and exciting, where most kids are either afraid or just plain don't want to go to their dentist. They get to have this sort of like fun interaction with you, and I think that is so cool the way that you do that.
Yeah, we've built our patient experience in our business. I think we've inverted it compared to what a lot of dental offices do. And our mindset when it comes to building our brand is, if you take care of the top of the line issues, you take care of the patient experience, the bottom line will take care of itself. As opposed to looking at the bottom line and squeezing every ounce of profitability and then saying we can only afford this much to put into the patient experience. We flipped that,
Yep.
and we said we are going to throw whatever we have at the patient experience. And I believe over time that then the bottom line ends up in a great spot.
Yeah, and just as a compliment to you, I have to tell you, it is obvious from when you walk in the door that you and the entire team, the office, the atmosphere, everything is committed to just delivering this insane, over the top experience for patients.
Yeah, I appreciate
What
that.
what are some of your favorite parts about starting a business and your business today? And then what are some of your least favorite parts? More speaking to the entrepreneurship than anything here.
Yeah, my favorite part. I almost said my most favorite part. My favorite part of starting a business by far is the autonomy, and that's more of just self-awareness. I'm just somebody who likes to be able to call the shots, and I've known that about myself for a very long time, going through school, going through sports. That's just me personally. I like having control over the business side. I like having control over, hey, we want to donate to this charity this month. I'm very intentional. Let's make a goal. This is how we're going to do it. Let's all get behind this. Let's use this as a very fun thing we're doing this month, and let's just do it. There's not a lot of back and forth. Let's ask corporate if we can do this. Let's ask our regional manager and this and that. So I wanted the flexibility to be able to do that. The risk and the downside that comes with that is there's no guaranteed salary that comes with that. There's no guarantee that the bills get paid, no guarantee the loan gets paid, and the loan's under my name. You go sign up with a bigger office or a corporate office, you have a regular paycheck coming in consistently. Nobody walks in the door and I'm going to get paid assuming the business doesn't go out of business, but I'm basically going to have to agree to whatever standards and rules they set. And if that means we work in a vanilla box and
Uh huh.
It's cookie cutter, and there's your chair, there's your mirror. Now go do your job. It's not,
Yeah.
it's just
Imagine
that's
telling
just
those
how it
guys
goes.
you want to give away a giant Lego, or you want to take everybody out to the movies or whatever. Like
Exactly.
you can't do that.
The second thing I would go to immediately is I had a desire to serve this area. And whenever you're in a brick and mortar type business like dentistry, it can scale, but there's only so much the individual service provider can do. There's only so many kids I can personally see. And so wherever I'm physically located is where I'm going to have the most regional impact. And we can definitely
Right.
have a bigger community service impact by using social media, which is part of our strategy. But the regional impact, I wanted to impact the region that I grew up in, because this region has, before I moved here, had really two pediatric dentists, one that had a private practice or has a private practice in Marion, the other that works here in Carbondale with a bigger corporation. But the area itself is so greatly underserved. Those providers are doing great, but we just need so many more, that I knew I
Yeah.
could make an immediate impact by setting up right here where I grew up. And so that was another, driver to build the business right here in Southern Illinois. Uh, Flip side to that, the risk that comes to everything. For every advantage I have a disadvantage. Is you can make an argument that from a sheer business perspective, you should go set up in a major affluent area. There's no reason that
Yeah.
you couldn't set up in, a suburb of Chicago or Edwardsville, or a wealthy suburb of even like Peoria. There's some areas that are vastly underserved where the median income is higher, but that wasn't my driving factor. There was a lot more.
Yeah.
I wanted to be in an area where I'm truly needed and I can make a more substantial impact, and here we are.
I love that. I want to divert just a little bit and talk about the actual way that Little Egypt is set
Mhm.
up. When you were setting up your business, what kind of business structure did you decide, and why? Is it an S corp, an LLC? What did you decide to do?
Initially, so first year we're sole proprietor. First year, this year we'll probably file as an S corp. So I mean, we set
Hmm.
up Little Egypt Pediatric Dentistry itself is a PLLC. So in the state of Illinois, we have PLLCs instead of LLCs for professional practices. And so we're a PLLC set up as a sole proprietor that this year is going to be an S corp. And I mean, the big thing for us is S corp is your owner draw, then plus your profit distribution. So there's the big draw to being an S corp is that we can take that profit distribution and kind of help with the tax planning that way.
Yeah. And so we already touched a little bit on this, like the licensing requirements. But for somebody who
Mhm.
doesn't know what goes into opening a pediatric dentistry office in Southern Illinois, what like that's a wildly complicated process, right? Like you have to have degrees and certifications. Your office has to be. Will you kind of talk about what goes into that?
Sure. There are many steps to open a pediatric dental office. I would start with just becoming a pediatric dentist. And so, in order to be a pediatric dentist, you have to get an undergraduate degree. So, generally, a 4-year school or combination. I went to a community college and then right to SIU Carbondale, where I got my degree in biological sciences. So, you have your first degree there. You then have to pass an entrance test called the DAT. And based on your score and your GPA, get into dental school, which is competitive. So now you're in dental school. You do 4 years of dental school, which I can tell you after being through all this, four of the hardest years of your life. It's strenuous, very rewarding on the back end, but very difficult. They push you hard to make sure you can get through it and that you can um, really absorb this amount of information in 4 years. Throughout that process, you're taking board exams. So you have a national board exam, a written exam that we took after our first year of dental school. It's been a while since I was in dental school, but we took that. And then right upon graduation, you took a clinical board exam. And so these are you take your national boards, and those actually the clinical board was your regional board. So you take your entrance tests, your two sets of national boards, your regional board, and that is to become a general dentist. So once you graduate from dental school, you're a general dentist. Then to specialize, you apply to a residency program. In my case, I went into the Air Force and spent 4 years there, but then came back, applied to my residency. You now have gotten into your residency. You've applied for residency. You're in residency. Once you finish your residency program, which for pediatrics is generally 2 years, some programs are longer, but at St. Louis University, it's 2 years. You now have your certificate in pediatric dentistry. So after all of that, you're a minimum 10 years to get your undergrad, dental school, and certificate. You're a decade in, and you can now call yourself a pediatric dentist. There is more licensing that I won't necessarily bore you guys with that goes into the actual physical structure. And a lot of that is more just building codes in the local environment that most commercial spaces have to follow: ADA accessibility, fire codes, stuff like that. There's some small ones in the dental world, such as like radiation safety that we have to follow.
Mm-hmm.
Some various things we have to have posted if we're using like lasers or using different technologies. That it's just kind of some of the fine print and rules that you have to follow. None of which is terribly complex. It just comes with the territory. But the biggest thing is that decade just to even get to the point you can have.
So with that in mind, this next question is a little bit funny, but were there any unexpected roadblocks or surprises when you were getting started that you didn't see coming in the pediatric? I mean, you've already got a decade of like, this is coming. You can't stick your toe in the water and test it out. You knew it was coming. Is there anything that will like kind of jumped out at you that you didn't expect to be a challenge?
Oh, absolutely. Every day. Every day there is an unexpected challenge. And I do think that a lot of the stuff that I do in my free time is listening to audiobooks about business and mindset and podcasts about mindset. So I give myself some credit in that I have mentally kind of put myself in a position that I'm ready for the unexpected. And I visualize it and kind of view it as that's the fun part, is this unexpected challenge comes up. And now we have the opportunity.
I love that.
Opportunity to solve it. And if you like problem solving, business ownership is for you, because you get to solve problems every day. But let's think, right when I was opening the business, one of the big ones, which I thought in an established commercial area, because I'm in a commercial part of town with tons of doctors' offices, would be a given: internet. And so what we have,
not in Southern Illinois.
But what we do is largely digital. Everything we do is cloud-based. We need the internet. Our phones run over the internet. Everything we have is dependent upon the internet. And so, of course, I want to get fiber internet so it's fast enough to keep up. And in the process of getting fiber, one provider cut the existing fiber line and we had no internet. And so when you are out of internet and you've got patients scheduled, you learn to just roll with the punches, which what we did is we used my phone's hotspot, which ran one computer in the office, which was my laptop, which was enough to carry around and function within the office for those 3 days until we had established internet. And then Nate, actually over at 618, he came in and bailed us out. He brought in an extra AT&T Wi-Fi thing that he had and kind of helped us run some internet on that. So big shout out to him for helping us out until the new fiber.
Yeah, we're going to plug that testimonial
absolutely,
here.
because I mean that was one of the so we kind of, part of the solution was relying on the people that were around that were willing to help, and we definitely appreciate the support we've gotten from the people at Carbondale. But the biggest thing is, every single day there's going to be something. You don't know what it is, and good luck even trying to predict it because it's always
okay.
Something.
So this is so fun to kind of go through this with you, because we've had lots of conversations around an adult beverage here, and I happen to know one of the stories for this one, and this is, how did you come up with the funding to get started? And I hope that you'll tell the story I'm thinking of.
Oh, I'm going to tell the story that you're thinking of. So
yes.
I'm going to tell you a couple stories. I'll keep it concise, but I'll tell you a couple stories. So generally speaking, big picture here, and a lot of the craziness that we do here is, a lot of it is possible because my wife is also a dentist. And so a lot of what we do I'm able to do because I can keep a lot of the revenue within the business to grow the business because my wife
Hmm.
also has a great income and we run our household mainly off of my wife's income. So I do like the listeners to know that, like, if you're comparing apples to apples, one, be careful doing that because you don't know a lot of the backstory, right? So I'm able to give away big Lego prizes and Pokemon cards and all of this. And I see that as an investment in the future of the office. But if my wife wasn't working, I would have to reevaluate how often I was doing that because it's expensive to do it. And so,
This is the second testimonial for Travis's
right.
wife.
Absolutely. Yeah, no, my wife gets by far the biggest testimonial. Like, this whole podcast should be called Thank You, Lauren. That's the name of my podcast. And so,
We'll rename it right now.
absolutely. Yeah, that's actually, we've been looking for a name. There it is. So first and foremost, funding for what we did comes from both of us working, being a dual income household. From there, bigger picture stuff. I was in the military, paid off a lot of loans, and we were very smart with personal financial management. And so we really eliminated our personal debt, student debt. We invest in real estate, variety index funds, and we set ourselves up from a very young age. Before the age of 30, we'd already have a good base of real estate and mutual funds. And so we were in a good position here, leading into the story you're thinking of, for me to take a little bit of a risk, which was one of the podcasts I alluded to earlier is the Gary Vaynerchuk, the Gary V experience. I listened to Gary Vaynerchuk quite a bit. So when he launched his project V Friends, which is an NFT project, we were in a good position. We had a little bit of money to burn. I was in residency and I said, you know what? I'm going to throw a flyer at buying an NFT at that time, which I had no idea what that even meant, really. And so I did some research. I said, you know what, let's try it. Bought some Ethereum, turned around and bought a VFriend, which was in my crypto wallet. And lo and behold, during the COVID times, that thing skyrocketed.
Which
And
one? Which one did you buy again?
I had the St. Louis and Toronto VFriend, which was basically these two birds, which quite frankly, I thought was going to have some kind of play on the Cardinals and the Blue Jays, which is the two birds. And so, being a baseball fan and being that my favorite team's the St. Louis Cardinals and my brother played for the Blue Jays, I was like, this is a cool, I like this one. And so I bought it, and really the entire market went up. Everything just went crazy. Um,
So
um,
before you tell the rest of the story, how much did you pay for this thing?
I paid around $3,000 to $4,000 for this
Okay,
thing.
so $3,000 to $4,000 on a complete whim. And for somebody who doesn't know what a VFriend is, will you explain what it looked like?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So a VFriend is an NFT project that was built by Gary Vaynerchuk. And so it originally, the first round of this, there were 10,000 something VFriends that he made, which were just essentially little sketches that he
They're
made. And
doodles, like
they're
they're
doodles.
little
He's not a
doodles.
serious artist. And so like the two birds were a circle, a triangle for the beak, and you're not looking at this saying, "Wow, this is Picasso." This is just you're basically betting on the merits of Gary Vaynerchuk and his community. And
And
so
so
yeah, go ahead.
so when you went home to Lauren the Saint and
Yeah.
said like, "Hey, I bought this piece of NFT art.
Mhm.
Here it is." What did she say?
Well, roundabout answer
We
to that because there, um, Lauren, I do most of the long term and short term investing within the household. Lauren definitely runs the household, no question about it, but I do the money management. And I more or less knew we were in a good position to take this risk. I ran it by her saying I wanted to do this, and it more or less fell down to if you feel that strongly about it, I support you to take that risk. And it was, I say this too, again, not coming from like a pompous point of view, but it was an amount of money that we were at the time that wasn't going to really affect us if we lost all of it. And
right.
so we took the gamble. And I said, this is nothing more than a speculation. It is a sheer gamble, but I believe in Gary Vaynerchuk and I want to see what happens. Well, the whole cryptocurrency market went crazy, which took all of NFTs and crypto up with it. And the NFT project, the one that I own, the Toronto St. Louis one, at some point got up to around $40,000. And that's where more of my traditional finance backing, I don't have a traditional like finance background with degrees or anything, but just kind of the from reading and listening and some of the Dave Ramsey influences, honestly, kind of came back. I started thinking about like sunk costs. And I was like, okay, if I had $3,000, I would be willing to buy this thing for $3,000. If I had $40,000, no doubt I never would spend $40,000 on this thing. So using kind of a sunk cost analysis, I knew in that moment that if I had $40,000 in the center of the table, no way I'm buying this thing, which to me was a trigger. I need to sell this thing. And so regardless of if it went to $1 million or if it went to zero, I was going to be happy with the fact that I got about 40,000. So I sold it for ballpark around there after taxes were accounted for. I think I, had profited around $30,000 or so, which then, because of a 10% down requirement for the building that we bought, which was around $300,000, was the down payment for the building that now holds Little Egypt Pediatric Dentistry.
That is the coolest down payment
Yep.
story of any business owner. In like that is, when you told me that, I was like, that is like the perfect explanation of how Little Egypt Pediatric Dentistry came to be. Like,
Yeah. Thank you, Gary.
I bought a doodle of two birds, sold it for 30 grand, put down payment on my office, and now we're like blowing kids' minds every day. I love that so much.
Yeah, and when you put it that way, that's kind of true. I never thought of it that way, but the kind of the mesh of reality and technology really has been our story even before day one. And here we are still doing the same thing.
Yep. So when you talk about like the tools it takes to run a pediatric dentist office, so like whether this is billing software or accounting software or like specialized pediatric dentist software, what are some of like the tools and resources like or software that you use all of the time? What are the things that are like your lifesavers inside the office? Do you use anything that you love?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. And when you get into the dental business or you get into really any niche industry, you'll find that there are really the behemoths that kind of control the market. So from a software standpoint, you've got, Dentrix, Open Dental, EagleSoft. There's these handful of practice management softwares that you
Hmm.
can choose from. In my practice, we use what's called Dentrix Ascend, which is a product that's made and ran by Henry Schein, which is one of the major medical supply companies in the dental world. And what I like about the Dentrix Ascend is they took a lot of these small jobs that used to you would have to have 15 softwares to do everything you wanted to do between patient charting, billing, sending statements, send a text message with a statement. That was something in dentistry you couldn't do for a long time. But as technology evolves now, we've got one cloud-based software that isn't perfect, but does most of those things for you in one place. And it's very convenient. I can log in as long as I have an internet connection. I can get in to anything I need. So if I have an emergency call, I can get on my cell phone. Which how cool is this? I get on this thing. I can pull up a patient's medical history, see their allergies, call them in a medication, and get a picture of the problem and pretty much have a diagnosis within a matter of a couple minutes and decide whether we need to go to the office. And I mean, 30 years ago, dentists would kill for that.
Yeah,
And here
that's
we are
so
now.
cool.
So, I mean, the other thing, and I don't mean this to sound like a broken record with technology, the biggest piece of technology or software that has revolutionized, I think, the world and especially the dental world, right here. I mean, there's nothing that thing can't do that isn't just spectacular, from a camera to communication to pulling up your software to really, I mean, prescriptions. You can do everything with that computer that's in your pocket. So specific to dental, I'd go with our patient management softwares, some of our billing softwares, some of the external billing services that we use that kind of take care of some of the day-to-day minutia, but really um, an iPhone.
I was just going to say, I know that Megan is just loving the new iPhone. So Megan
Yeah.
runs your social media and like Like, I mean, seriously, all day, every day, 4,000 videos. You guys put out more content than any other business I've ever seen in my life. And it's like, it's the heartwarming stuff. Like, you just did something for Mother's Day with all the kids talking about why they love their moms. You do fun events. Like, that's really cool. And I think that when you bought Megan her new iPhone, I think that, like, she was ready to do cartwheels in the office. Like, she was ready.
Oh, Megan's a creative superstar. And it's funny because Megan also probably gets the hardest critiques from me too on deciding the routes we want to go with content. And she has taken this and ran with it. And for the longest time, this was actually kind of funny from a business standpoint. My Megan she used to own a business where she really spent a lot of time on the design side. She was designing these, flower arrangements and doing kind of these balloon arches and doing a ton of stuff where the aesthetic was extremely important, to the point that I actually refused to buy an iPhone at first because I knew that the camera was so good that she was going to nitpick every single thing she did until it was perfect. And so, as a kind of backwards way of strategy, I wanted her to use a camera that wasn't as good to get comfortable putting out something that wasn't perfect. And then once we got on a strategy, we got on the same page with strategy, which now she's taken even to a new level beyond what I expected. We also implemented the good camera. And so now we've got the strategy in place. We're not second guessing every single little minor thing, and we're going volume that's even higher quality at volume.
If you have not checked out, a Little Egypt Pediatric Dentist, will you just kind of throw out what are your social media handles so people can find you?
Yeah, the low hanging fruit is usually Little Egypt Pediatric Dentistry. You can find us on most platforms at that. Otherwise, it's at the Toy Dentist, which on YouTube and TikTok you'll find us at the Toy Dentist.
You should definitely check these out. These, like, he does such a wonderful job. Megan does such a wonderful job. So when you were kind of getting up and going, and I know this is something that I just kind of know about your story. When you think back to like the mentors that helped you along the way, who stands out?
That's a great question. There are a couple mentors right off the bat that really stand out, and that is, Dr. Martin Hamilton. He was my residency director in the Air Force. So I did another year of residency while I was in the Air Force. I didn't mention that earlier, but he was somebody who, the wisdom that he really imparted on me was, when you have a good day, be happy about your good day, but don't get too high on yourself that day. And when you have a bad day, realize what happened that day and what you could do better, but don't get too low on yourself that day. Know that the majority of your time is somewhere in the middle. And over this long career, you're going to impact and influence and help thousands of people. And playing the long game, you're going to impact a ton of people. So day to day, don't get too high, don't get too low. Just kind of be right there in the middle. And so
Oh,
it was
that's
a
good advice.
combination, and I didn't know this at the time really until I reflected on it, but it was a combination of integrity and humility. It's a combination of just do the right thing, and when things are going awesome, stay humble. But then when they're not going as you want them to, as long as you're doing the right thing, you don't have to feel like you're the biggest failure in the world. And so when things are going down, I usually pop back up pretty quickly. And when I'm really, really, things are going awesome, it's a lot easier to actually feel overconfident. And so when things are going awesome, 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 you got to step back and stay humble. After that, Dr. Dan Steckel, huge mentor of mine. He was my residency director at St. Louis University. Common thread here with residency directors.
Uh
Um,
huh.
the biggest thing about Dr. Steckel is kind of the same thing, is that in no circumstance in my life, he was one of my instructors in dental school and in residency, would I ever second guess the intentions of Dr. Dan Steckel. That he's a man that will do the right thing for the kid every single time, every time, no questions asked. If you are wondering why he did that treatment, was there There's never an ulterior motive to it. It's just, it was in the best interest of the kid. And you learn very quickly that the respect that comes with that, the respect that comes with just do the right thing. It's so simple, but in a day-to-day environment where there are 1,000 things pulling you different directions, whether it's insurance companies or finance or, what's our profit margin going to be on this procedure, just do the right thing with the training you have. And again, going back to your best quote, which I'll let you add, do the right thing, and the bottom line is going to take care of itself, and your practice reputation is going to take care of itself. But I gotta let you say your famous quote.
I, I can't. I'm not going to miss an opportunity. So the secret to life is to put so much good out into the world that it cannot help but find its way back to you. And I do think that one of the things that I love about working with you and kind of being in your orbit is it is so clear that you thrive off of the joy of the kids that are in your office. That like that is so fun to be around. And if anybody has seen you at work, I think they would
No,
agree
I
with me.
appreciate that. We really do try to have fun, and I honestly do. I become more energized throughout the day as there's more kids interactions. There's a limit to it. I have to have a little break at the end of the day whenever I'm acting like a character all day. But it's just fun. It's fun and it's energizing.
I love that. So tell me about big plans. As you look out to what you're going to do a year, 2 years, 3 years, 10 years down the road, where do you see Little Egypt Pediatrics? What are the big goals that you have for the practice?
What's so funny about this is, and you could ask Lauren this too. This is the type of marriage we have. Thank God for my wife. Um, we moved into our new house, and the first thing that I put up in our house was a giant whiteboard in our bedroom. You walk in, the first thing you saw, tiny TV, giant whiteboard. And it wasn't subtle. It's right on the wall. Like you can't help but see it. That whiteboard has since moved to the office, but the where I'm going with that is I've always been somebody that constantly has my 1 year, 3 year, 5 year reviewing the goals, and I'm constantly making these longer term goals. And quite frankly, at a certain point of this business growing, I stopped making 5 and 10 year goals to a certain extent because it's changing so rapidly right now that I'm just having to shatter them so quickly. So I kind of try to stay in the 1 to 3 year time frame as far as a realistic time frame that I could predict. I was actually talking to Miss Thelma, who is kind of the head administrator of all of our business operations here at the practice, and telling her that we're only 9 months in, and we're looking at adding our surgical location. We now have 2 spots that we're doing surgeries between SIH and being in Belleville. Adding the second surgical location, that wasn't even on the radar. That was something that at this point we thought we would have 4 employees. We thought we would have 3 rooms at any given time. We have 5 rooms that sometimes are all packed. We still have room to grow, but we have 5 rooms that are packed. We're 40% further along than what we thought. We have, I think, 11 employees. We thought we were going to have 4. We just have grown so rapidly, which is a good problem to have, that it's almost impossible to know. Would I want a second location? Maybe. If I liked from when I was in the Air Force, I loved the camaraderie. We had a group practice there. There were 5 or 6 dentists at any given time, and it was really nice having 2 or 3 other people to bounce ideas off of. Or if a kiddo, sometimes as much as you love pediatric dentistry, sometimes a kiddo responds better to another provider, and that's
Right,
fine.
right. That makes sense.
And so like a great example would be, I've had a couple little girls, and I came in and they had a girl dentist before, and I scared them just from walking in and being a boy. They wanted a girl dentist. So if you had a female provider right off the bat, the rapport is going to be built a lot easier for that kiddo. And it's not really so much about your ego, about how can you do what's best for the kid. And
Yeah.
so if there was a situation where you could have a group practice, have a couple doctors that liked what we were doing and embraced the craziness of the social media and, you know, the giveaways and being involved in the community, then I could see having a second location. But the double-edged sword of that is if you don't find the right number of people, you end up with 2 or 3 locations and only 1 or 2 doctors. You're now trying to service a lot more locations and you run out of time. And
Yeah,
so the long-term goal of the practice is still evolving. It
I
could
love
be
that.
that we have a couple locations and we're kind of trying to service most of Southern Illinois. It could be that we have 1 location in Carbondale, our surgical location, and it's just me. Um, that's to be determined. I'm having a lot of fun the way it is now. I'm someone very much with a growth mindset. And so I don't think we'll sit stagnant for long. But short term, going back to we do have some goals, and I'll be a little bit more open on this podcast than what I am a lot of times. But our big goal this year is that in our first full year of business, I want to hit $1 million in collections, and so that is our financial goal. We have review goals as far as how many 1-star reviews we want each quarter. So we track our reviews. We honestly track everything, but I picked 3 or 4 things each quarter that we're tracking. So this quarter we're tracking reviews, we're tracking new patients, and we're tracking revenue.
So I would be remiss if I didn't go back just a second here to talk about that
Yeah.
big financial goal.
Yeah.
That is nearly unheard of in your industry, isn't it? Like you're talking about reaching that number faster than you ever could have expected starting out.
That's fair. I'll be completely candid, and I don't honestly know how often that's accomplished in our industry. And within the first year, I would anticipate it's very rare. And so, in the process of deciding if we're going to buy or start a practice, I will say that I've seen the numbers of many practices. Going back to my wife, she's a general dentist, so she's an adult dentist. And so we looked at a lot of general dental offices in the process of deciding, are we going to start our own practice? Am I going to start a practice? Are we going to buy a practice? So I've seen a lot of numbers of practices, and hitting the $1 million mark in dentistry is that's not that rare. Like that can be done fairly routinely depending on your market and kind of how often you're open. But doing it within the first year is an ambitious goal. That's a very ambitious goal, and one that we're on track to hit. And so it's just a matter of finishing out the year. We're not quite halfway through, but we've got some work to do, but we're heading in the right direction.
That's awesome. Okay, so now we're going to go a little bit deep, okay? I've got 2 for
Yeah.
you. Knowing what you know right now, if you could go all the way back to the Travis walking into, what would end up being your first of 10 years of dental school, what advice would you give your younger self before starting?
That is an awesome practice. What advice would I give to myself before starting dental school? Hang in there. I know that is such a cliche answer, but I'm not somebody who has a lot of self-doubt, which is that's a
Hmm.
superpower and a curse, because for me, I set a path, and once I set that path, I go for it, and I go all in down that path that I want to try more at, and all it takes is curiosity to know what will happen. And so when we got into this, and you and I started working together, we said, "Why are we doing this? It's never been done. I want to break this and see what happens, and try something new, just to do it, just to say I tried, and so I can avoid saying what if, And so I would really just tell myself, hey, the end result, you're gonna like it. I guess actually, come to think of it, the one thing I would maybe tell myself, I don't have a lot of regrets of what I did, is do pediatrics. Because I, coming into dental school, thought I wanted to do pediatrics, and I wasn't for sure if I wanted to do it. Maybe I would do adult dentistry, and so I would just reaffirm, like, follow your gut, do pediatrics, you're gonna love it. But outside of that, there's not a whole lot that I would tell myself to change. I would
Okay.
confirm, hey, in your third year of dental school, when you meet Lauren, yeah, definitely marry her. That would be that would be the other thing that I would tell you. Yeah,
Good
yeah. To
decisions.
make sure you do that. I mean, there were hiccups along the way that I would, you know, I would change along the way. But I mean, very minor stuff of just being, young and dumb and learning and just living life.
Okay, ready for
Yeah.
you ready for this one? Now flip it. What if Travis on day one of dental school got to walk into the office that you have now and meet this version of you? What would he say?
He would say, "Holy shit, I'm going to do this." Now, the the caveat to that is I don't know if I don't know if the Travis from day one of dental school would have even thought this was feasible because the couple other things was, when I was 26, I guess I graduated dental school at 26. So I started dental school at 22. I'd only lived in Southern Illinois at that time. So at
Uh
22, I
huh.
wasn't 100% committed that I was coming back here. I still needed to see the world, which is what led to the Air Force commitment because I wanted to see different parts of the country. I lived in California for a year, lived in Kansas City, loved it, but decided ultimately I wanted to be closer to family and move back here. And so the dental school Travis walking in probably would have been like, well, you know, I'm not sure I want to live in Southern Illinois, but this makes a pretty compelling argument to live here because this is pretty awesome. And so I would have been, my jaw probably would have hit the floor because this is like right up my alley.
I think so too.
Yep.
So in our last segment, one of the things that I always try and ask is if you looked at somebody else who was making the decision to found their own pediatric dentist practice right now,
Mm-hmm.
what advice would you give to them about how to think about it, whether to go in private practice, whether to do it themselves, whether to found their own, what decisions to make? What advice would you give there? And I want to give you kind of an
Mm-hmm.
opportunity to go a little deep here.
Yeah, absolutely. This is, I'm very passionate actually about this topic. I'm glad you asked. So, the advice that I would give somebody coming out of residency, in my opinion, there's no wrong route. There is an individual route kind of based on just being honest with yourself and being self aware and knowing the pros and cons of each. I would have gone crazy working for a corporate office that was telling me how to do everything. Like knowing myself, luckily I was in the military and I was told how to do stuff for 4 years, and I got a firsthand experience of I I love certain parts of this, but knowing exactly where I'm going to be in 20 years from both a career standpoint and a finance standpoint, I didn't like that. That wasn't motivating to me. I knew where the end point was, and I didn't like knowing where the end point was. I wanted to try to shoot to the moon and see where I could go, and what I could build and who I could impact and have uh, a greater mission. And so know yourself coming into this. So something like corporate dentistry gets a very bad reputation because right off the bat, a lot of older, generally older, closer to retirement age dentists, there was no corporate dentistry whenever they started. So corporate dentistry is essentially what's called a DSO, where a group of practices is bought up by an individual owner and then run more like a corporation just in the healthcare world. And so
Mm-hmm.
these get a bad reputation because there's a lot of disconnection between the owner and the individual service provider, and there's a lot more profit drive when you get private equity involved. And so some of them are run very poorly to where the patient care side is secondary to the profit. But not all of them are that way.
Right.
Lauren worked for one that was fantastic, and when she was in Kansas City had a great experience. And so what I would say to a new grad is if you're somebody who's a little nervous and you want some experience and you're a little nervous about taking on the debt commitment of owning the new practice, there's nothing wrong with working for a corporate office or working for a group practice or working in education or working in another aspect of dentistry before you decide exactly if you want to be the owner. The other aspect of being the owner, which you know very well from being a business owner, is your hours don't stop. We see patients 8 to 3, and I love that. I have a shortened work day, and you could make the argument that in time I could hire more people and I could see patients longer, which is probably the most profitable way for us to work. But from a business management standpoint, it's almost 6 o'clock now, and you and I are on a podcast, and this is a lot of fun. I would honestly do this for fun anyway, but 8 to 3's patients, 3 to whenever you finish the job is everything else. And so if you are somebody who's
Yep.
managing family life and you're managing anything, it could be aging parents or pets at home or whatever it is, that you have these other commitments, then sometimes business ownership isn't the perfect route right away. But I'm going to say one more thing here, which is the complete flip side, which is what the corporate offices and the reps and the sales reps are going to sell you, which is that you don't have the business education, therefore you can't do it. And you should let us do the dentist, or you should do the dentistry. We should do the business. And there are a lot of companies that are going to try to sell you that BS. And that is also not true, because
I
as
love it.
the dentist, you know better than anyone with a business degree how to deliver dentistry. Now, you do have to have that humility and realize you're going to have to learn business if you want to be the business owner. But you just went through 10 years of school. You have the ability to
Yeah.
learn. And so, if anybody has the audacity to walk in and tell you, you know, you're incapable of learning this, well, they're clueless. They have no idea
Yeah.
what you're capable of learning after what you just went through. So I would say if you have that itch to be an owner and you're just struggling with self-confidence, reach out and talk to more owners and people that have been there, and join some of the Facebook groups. Are a great place to be with the new practice ownership Facebook groups. There's a lot of people that are here to help you, myself included. I will be your biggest advocate to getting your practice up and running, because I love dentistry and pediatric dentistry that much. And so know yourself, don't be scared, but then also don't feel bad if you decide that your route is to work for a federal clinic, or your route is to work for corporate dentistry. My wife is never going to own a practice. She has no will to do what I do. She doesn't want to be on social media. She doesn't want to run the business. She wants to show up, deliver exceptional care to her patients, go home, hang out with our kids, have a glass of wine, and just decompress. I want to get off work and talk to Nick on a podcast, and then talk about what we're going to do in 5 years, and how we're going to go to this chamber event, and how we're going to do this thing, and we're going to get 20 bounce houses, and how we're going to be the mayor, the kids mayor of Carbondale. And we go down the tangents because I find that fun, and that's me. So know yourself.
Travis, that is wonderful. I cannot thank you enough for taking the time to do this today. If you haven't checked out Little Egypt Pediatric Dentistry, Travis, your website is just as fun as your office. Definitely check that out. Follow Travis on social media. Will you drop those social media handles one more time for me?
I will, right after my shameless plug, that when you see our fun website, that it was basically ground up, designed and created and made and designed, or I already said designed and run by Alter Ego Marketing and Heron. So I do want to tell that story before I jump off here, because literally,
Third shameless plug.
well, I don't mind the plugs. The when people are in your corner, and actually that's another good Nick quote. It's like, when you're my people, once someone is your people, you will, I'm going to butcher your own quote, but basically you'll go to the end of the earth for them. And
That's it.
alter ego is my people, and so Nick and I had known each other fairly well at this point. We had done a couple projects together, but he said, I feel like I know you pretty well. Do you care if we just kind of make your website and just kind of go with it? And I said, that idea is crazy enough that I love it. Just go with it. Just do it.
And Gabby crushed it. So
Oh my
Gabby from the digital marketing team, like she came in and there's like you holding up words, mega grand prizes or something, and I was just like, this is amazing.
When I came up with the concept for our office with the Lego inspired walls, I literally went on Microsoft Paint and was using lines and circles. And this is how I think the Lego inspired wall should work. And so when you take my skill set and then and where I'm at, and I'm thinking of an idea of a website, and then you create what Gabby is capable of creating, my mind, my jaw, if it could disconnect and lay on the floor, it would still be there. It is the most fun dental website you will ever see.
That is high praise, Travis. Thank you so much for your time
Yep.
today. I know that we're going to have you back, and I seriously, the fact that you just are willing to get on here and open your book is wonderful. Thank you so much for sharing today.
Yeah, glad to be here. And like Nick said, you can find us at Little Egypt Pediatric Dentistry on most major platforms. If you can't find us at Little Pediatric Dentistry, you can find us at The Toy Dentist. I invite you to follow us on TikTok at The Toy Dentist. A lot of fun videos there.
All right, thanks, Travis.
Yeah, thank you, Nick. This was a lot of fun.